Hey mamas, welcome to the Mom Chat Show where we talk all things motherhood and we keep it real, raw, and honest. And me and my new besties, we're ready to share it all with you. Yes, you heard right. All of it. The mistakes, the trial and errors, the ups, the downs, the emotional roller coasters, and the happy times too. So if you're ready to laugh, cry, learn, and just have a good time, then this is your podcast show. You're my people. Let's chat. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Mom Chat Show. I'm super excited, y'all, because we're getting a male perspective today on fatherhood, and that makes me super curious, excited, and all the things, y'all. So I am excited to introduce my guest, and I would love it if you tell us how long you've been a father and a little bit about yourself.
Thanks so much for having me on the Mum Chat Show. So my name is Nate Robinson and I'm from Australia. I've been a dad for 5.5 years now. And I'll tell you what, it's the best job I've ever had. I'm living my best life.
Awesome. So I think the biggest question I've always wondered is like when y'all initially find out, like, okay, I'm about to be a dad, or you find out that we actually told you, like, we're pregnant. What is the reaction and the feeling that y'all feel? Because I've always been curious, like, is it excitement? Is it fear? Because, guys tend to not always say everything. And I think they try to protect us a little bit, because it's supposed to be exciting. So what was your emotion?
Well, I have a bit of a different story than a lot of other guys. So hopefully I can sort of give you a good perspective here. But I actually met my partner when she was already 4 months pregnant.
Wow. Oh my
God. She had told me she's pregnant, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Now, a lot of guys that she had spoken to in the past sort of thought she was easy because she was single and pregnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for myself, I was like, okay, cool, you're pregnant. Who cares? Let's just keep talking here. So for me, I didn't have that opportunity of hearing the news of, hey, look, I'm pregnant, and going through that whole emotional roller coaster, which I'm sure a lot of guys do. But I've always wanted to be a dad, right from when I was a little boy. They'd ask you in school, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of boys would say, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be in the army. And I was like, I just want to be a dad, So for me, it was just, I guess I took the shortcut, so to speak. I didn't get the fun in the process of making that life, but that had the fun of raising this little boy, which has been amazing. So yeah, for me, it was very, very different.
Yes. I love that you said that you got the pleasure of raising this little boy, and that was like the greatest part for you. I feel like that is awesome to hear, especially when it wasn't your birth son. So to actually feel that way it's beautiful. That's a beautiful feeling and thing to hear.
Yeah.
I am curious though, since she was already 4 months, you still got to experience some of the pregnancy.
Yes.
And one thing I've heard is that by being around pregnant women, at times it affects the male. And they said that it can be like almost like a reaction, some type of way. I have to like dig a little further in the science part of it, but something happens to where they get some of the things that we experience. And it could be either cravings or moods or all different types of things. So did you get any of those things?
Yeah, I was having massive mood swings, and it was so bizarre for me because it was something I'd not experienced. And the thing about the cravings, that's real as well. I was craving the same things that she was craving. Yeah, like okay, look, I'm craving this. Can you go out and get it? I'm like, yeah, actually, I was just thinking about that. I'll be back in 20 minutes, Yeah, I experienced lower back pain as well, which was really bizarre. My back would be aching, and I'd be thinking, well, what's going on? I haven't done anything overly physical. I haven't exerted myself. I haven't pulled my back or anything. What's going on, you know? So yeah, there were those little experiences. I don't know whether if you know if I was his biological father, whether that would have more of an impact or not. But yeah, just being there with her, I sort of picked up a few of those little sympathy pains and that sort of thing. So that was definitely a learning experience for me.
Oh my goodness. So it's true. Because I've even seen like where some fathers even go as far as they get pregnancy weight too, because of the fact they were going through so many different things that they gain weight with their wife or their whoever they had their baby with. And I'm like, oh my God.
Around that time, I started getting fat myself. Yeah, you know, because again, like we'd just sit there with her favorite thing to do at the time was watching Gilmore Girls. She was just binging Gilmore Girls. And so I'd be curled up on the couch with her under a blanket. We'd be stuffing our faces with chocolate and whatnot, you know, like just doing the pregnancy thing. And yeah, that was awesome. It was a really good way for us to bond as well, because we were still in a real fresh relationship at that time as well. So, you know, for me, it was cool because I was sharing her interests and really getting to know who she was as a person as well.
Exactly. Did you have any of like the weird cravings? Because sometimes we get like weird stuff and it's like gross combinations and stuff that makes people like, ugh, because, you know, we can't control it. And I had a lot of those situations happen to me. So did you get any of those too?
From what I can remember, I don't believe so. But I mean, I've heard crazy stories, you know, wanting gherkins and ice cream and stuff like that. But you know, for us, it was mainly, you know, oh, I might be craving a McChicken from McDonald's, and we never eat that sandwich or whatever. You know, it was just stuff that is pretty normal, but outside the box for normally what we would normally go for.
Oh my gosh, because I had the weirdest things, and it wasn't with my first, it's more so with the second. The second one really got me. Like I was actually craving things that I was actually allergic to. For some odd reason, because of me being pregnant, I had no allergic reaction. It was so weird. I had no idea what happens in the body, why that happened. It was just really weird. Because I, to this day, if I tried to eat what I was eating when I was pregnant with him, I would be in the hospital. So, and
Wow.
there's no way. Um, but during it, I was eating like peanut butter and peanut butter cookies and all these things that I know for a fact I cannot eat. So pregnancy is just weird. It's a very interesting process that takes place for sure. And I find it very interesting that it actually affects the males that are around us. And I find it funny too, because when they try to deny it, and you're like, wait, and you start paying attention to certain things, you're like, no, you're definitely being affected. Like you may not be admitting it, you may be in doubt or, you know, trying to deny it, but you're having some problems too. It's mutual going
Yeah,
on
yeah,
there.
really notice it at the time. It was more one of those things that I sort of picked up on in a time of reflection, you know. Like at the time I just figured, oh well, I'm just here supporting her and this is how it all is. But looking back on it retrospectively, I'm going, man, that was weird. What was going on there?
It started to make you think a little bit like
Absolutely. But look, I mean, I'm so glad I'm a male because I don't think I have the guts to be able to go through pregnancy and labor and all of that because it's just so physically intensive
yeah.
that I can't imagine how anybody does it.
Oh, I know. I can say that and I've had three. When I think back on it, I'm like, what? It's literally like when you think back on it in your head, you're like, I actually did that. And I did it more than once. It
Hmm.
makes you feel like, you know, you kind of went through this little cycle of insanity a little bit because when you think of all the things that take place during the labor process, pregnancy is like, why would I willingly volunteer to do this over again? But then it's like once you have one, something happens to where mentally you're like, I have to do it again.
Hmm.
I need to do it again. So you do it again. And then afterwards, you know, having a certain amount, then you're like, wait, why did I do that again? I mean, I'm grateful, But I don't know. I really don't know. It's a chemical thing, I think.
Look at the neurological side of things there, because I mean, you think about it, if you fall off a push bike and break your leg, you're like, well, I don't want to do that again. That hurt. Pregnancy and childbirth, I don't know, but from an outsider looking in, it seems almost like women forget that pain.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether it maybe even be the fact that you get drugged up and you're off in la la land while you're in labor or whatever. I don't know. But it seems that you forget about the pain and you're ready to
Mhm.
do it all over again.
That is true. That is actually true. They talked about it. I'm trying to think of where I read it on. They were actually saying that we do that exact thing. And when we first have them, that's all that's on our brain, obviously, because we're sore and it's just whoo.
Hmm.
It's hard not to think about it. Like, but then I think maybe a year or so after having them, it doesn't come in our head anymore. And now thinking on like after I had my daughter, I didn't even think about the C-section. Like it was just like, oh, it happened. But like that's so normal to get cut open, right? But yeah, it wasn't on my head anymore. It was just kind of like, oh, this is so great. Maybe I should have another one that looks like her. And now she has a playmate and this and this. And you start thinking of all of these crazy things as if you didn't just get cut.
Yeah.
So I have no understanding of why we do that, but we do. And then, like years later, after they've already gotten a little bit older, we come back to the same thoughts all over again. And it's just like, what type of game is this? I don't get it. I just really don't. Me and my friend talk about it frequently because we're all in our 30s now and we're all going through the same thing of should we have another? And we're like, but all of our kids are at a certain age. Like, why would we do that?
Yeah.
Why would we do that? We don't know. It just seems right. It just seems right to do.
Yeah, look, as well, we're doing fertility testing and all that sort of thing as well. So yeah, I mean, our son is 5.5 years old, and we're still going, hey, we want to have another baby. Whether that'll happen for us or not, we don't know. But if it does, well, we'll be definitely blessed. But yeah, like again, we're at that spot where we're like, yeah, we want to have another baby. I don't know if my partner has been thinking about how everything went down the first time, but I still go back and I think to that time in the delivery room and go, man, like that's an ordeal. Do we really want to do that all over again? The sleepless nights, the dirty diapers, the whole shebang. Like, do we want to? Like, I'm finally able to wear a t-shirt and keep it clean for longer than 5 minutes. It's great.
I know. That leads me to the questions. Like you are right on where I'm about to ask you. When labor hits, what was going through your brain? Like, because that is usually the most scariest time ever, especially when it's like the first time. Because you say you're going to act a certain way, you say you're going to do these certain things, but for some reason, when it happens, it's like everything is wiped away, and you're just like, what was I supposed to do? And you're panicking, and it's a mess. And everybody's just running around in circles. And then you always have at least one sane person that's like, well, you might want to actually get your bags, or you might actually want to go to the hospital. So, what happened?
Well, having a plan in your head, you're totally right. It's all bull pop. It doesn't work out the way you think it's going to be. You could be as prepared as you think you can be, and nothing's going to prepare you for it. As for the sane person, that was my partner, Christine. I mean, she was so level-headed about it. So basically, she was due to be induced the following day. She was 10 days overdue. And so it was, I think, about 8:30 at night. And I turned to her and I said, look, I'm going to go to bed because either this is happening tonight or, we're going in tomorrow and it's going to be a big day tomorrow. So I'm going to go get some sleep now just in case. So she's like, yeah, that's fine. She'd been uncomfortable all evening. So we knew something was happening, but we weren't entirely sure. So she came in a few hours later and woke me up. She goes, hey, look, we need to go to the hospital. And I went, what? What do we need to go to the hospital for? I'm half asleep. I'm groggy. I'm not absorbing information. He goes, well, we've got to go to the hospital. I'm sure the baby's coming. I've just spoken to the midwives at the hospital. We've got to go in. And I went, oh, okay. And I rolled over and went back to sleep.
Oh my God.
And so she's nudged me and she goes, babe, we have to go to the hospital now. I went, oh, wait, it's happening? I went, no, really, is it happening? She goes, yes, it's go time. We've got to go. I'm like, what? We got to go? Okay. All right. I'm up. Let's go. I'm pulling pants on. I'm getting my shoes on. Where's the bag? Oh, we've got the bag. The bag's by the door. That's right. Okay. And we're about to run out the door, and I stop dead in my tracks, look at her and go, wait a minute. Ran back into the apartment to the bathroom and threw up.
Gosh.
Just all the anxiety, everything coming on all at once. The panic, the excitement, all these emotions, it was just bleh, all came out at once. So yeah, off to the hospital we went, and he was on his way. Poor woman, she was in labor all night, and he was born about an hour and a half. I could be wrong. In fact, it was less than an hour before her appointment was originally booked to be induced. So yeah, it was a long night. I wish I had have taken an air fryer and some chicken tenders, because hospital food is terrible. I wish I had have taken some screwdrivers with me so I could play around with the cabinetry or something to keep myself occupied. Yeah, I ended up curling up in the corner of the supply closet in the delivery room and slept for a while until it was go time. Yeah, I'll tell you what, it was nuts. But watching her go through what she did, giving birth to our son, it gave me a whole new respect for her. And I looked at her in a whole different light, and I fell in love with her in a whole brand new way. And it was absolutely amazing. The experience itself was mind blowing. So just trying to be a support for her was my main goal. I struggled a bit with that. There's so much going on. But yeah, I mean, it was just so much all at once. Trying to process it all in that moment was damn near impossible.
I know. It's so much. And it's like, it's a lot. It's a lot for us, but I've always wondered, like, what is happening for y'all? Because I know it has to be a lot of pressure. I know it has to be. Because for one, you're scared just as much as we are, but you have to not like panic too much because you need to get us to the hospital. You need to like help us out. So it's like you have to be sane, but not sane all at the same time. Like that's a lot.
We'd only been dating for about 5 months at this point as well. So I'm like, is it appropriate to be down the business end with the catcher's mitt and hey, better? Or do I need to stay up the front and hold her hand and just stroke her head? What do I do? And at one point I did look down the business end and I went, oh, that looks painful. I'm going to leave that to the midwives, and I stayed there and held her hand and just tried to be as supportive as I could. But yeah, there was a lot to navigate because we were in a really fresh relationship. We're still, in a way, getting to know each other. And so really, this was like the fast track of getting to know you. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. And I was gonna ask you, like, did you go down there to see? Because I've heard so many horror stories of guys considering it, but then they're like, should I? Should I not do it? I don't know if I want to do it. And then some actually doing it and then fainting and and being traumatized because it is a lot that takes place. So I was definitely going to ask you, like, did you actually decide to do it? Or were you like,
It was a brief glance. He was crowning. And I saw that and I went, ooh, that looks painful. And I looked at her and I went, you doing okay? She goes, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just pushing, doing what I got to do. I'm glad you've got that epidural, babe, because that looks painful.
From what I heard, because I didn't do the natural route, yeah, the head and the shoulders is no joke. So you might have dodged a bullet by not seeing anything past head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I feel sorry for her as well because our son, his shoulders got stuck and ended up wrenching one of his shoulders. So instead of being able to have that initial skin to skin contact and cuddle him, he was rushed straight over onto a bassinet, I guess you could say. And the midwives and nurses were working on him because they weren't sure how serious it was.
Yeah.
So he was in the NICU for a few days and ended up just being just fine. Didn't pop his shoulder out or anything like that. It was just a bit of bruising. But yeah, that was something I'm glad that I wasn't there to witness, because I honestly do think it would have sent me into a panic. And the last thing I wanted was to panic, because my partner saw me panicking. That's when she's gonna panic. And of course, once the baby's born, it's not over yet. You've still got the afterbirth and everything coming as well. And so I didn't want to complicate that for her by freaking out. You know what I mean?
I love that you thought about that because the emotions are definitely high when that time period is happening. We're thinking so many things. It's just like unreal. The
Mm-hmm.
amount of thoughts that are happening and the amount of emotions that are happening. So I love that you said that you actually considered that and kind of was like, I'm gonna, kind of reel it in a little bit. And then the afterbirth, like, because I always try to ask, like other people that have experienced it. And the process is just a lot because it's like you go from the baby and now you have all the other stuff and trying to make sure everything is out. And it's just a lot. It's a lot. And then
Yeah.
you have to think too, like, okay, now that the baby is out, is everything good? Because there's so
Mm-hmm.
many things that can happen once they're getting pushed out. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah. As for the afterbirth and all that, I wasn't really there for that because I was too focused on our son. So
Mm.
because he'd had the issue with his shoulder, he'd been rushed off to NICU pretty quickly. And again, navigating this new relationship, I wasn't sure what my role was meant to be. Okay, so I'm there with her. I'm like, okay, what do you need me to do? Do you need me to stay here with you? Or do you need me to go with the baby? Or do you need me to just give you all some space and step back? What do you need? And she's like, look, I've got mum here. Mum can help me here. I need you to go with the baby. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, yeah, just get out of here. Go with the baby. So I'm running up the hallway behind the nurses with the baby, heading up to NICU and that sort of thing. And yeah, once we got to NICU, I'd been up there for an hour. I'd sort of just been with him and whatnot. I hadn't held him yet because I felt that if I did, I'd be taking something away from my partner. You know,
Mhm.
I he's not my biological son. I didn't feel I had that right, if that makes sense. So about an hour later, I went back down to the delivery room because she'd been worried about her son. And I said, look, he's fine. Everything's good. He's healthy. He's pink. He's beautiful. I haven't held him yet. When can you come up to NICU to be able to hold your son? And she goes, what do you mean you haven't held him yet? And I went, well, I don't want to overstep my boundaries here. Like, brand new relationship. This is your son. So, like, tell me, what do you want me to do? And she straight away, get your butt back up to NICU, go hold that baby. And so that was phenomenal for me, being able to hold him and feed him and that sort of thing. And I think I shocked the nurses a bit as well because I'm the oldest of five. And I've gone in and they've said, okay, we're gonna feed him. Do you want us to show you how to do it? No, I'm good. Do you want us to show you how to pick him up? I went, no, I'm sweet. And I just scooped him up, stuck the bottle in his mouth, fed him. No issues. Do you need us to show you how to change a diaper? No, I'm sweet. I've got it. So I don't think the nurses in the NICU were used to that. especially with a first-time parent.
That is so accurate. Because normally the new dad is like doing the juggle effect and like panicking and like, do I do this? Do I do that? And, they're just trying to bear with him because he's a nervous wreck. So that is definitely not something you see all the time.
They're so small and they seem so fragile, but essentially you're just holding this bundled up piece of rubber, like so flexible and like people panic so much about the fragility of this baby, but they've just been pushed through a birth canal, which is a third of their size, so they're resilient little people.
That is so true. I've never thought of it like that. That is very accurate because I know when I first had my son, I was horrified. Like, I mean, granted, I automatically wanted to hold him, but then it was like, oh my gosh, am I holding him too tight? Am I holding him right? Like, should I do this? Should I do that? It was just a lot of question marks and very lot of hesitation because I'm in my head, I'm like, he's fragile. Like, I don't want to mess this up. So yeah, it was a lot of nerves, a whole lot of nerves. And one thing that, like, going back on something you said that I love is that you actually asked her. I think that that is genius because sometimes I think usually the male, they get so excited and they want to help so badly that they just go ahead and just do it. But they never think about the fact, like, what do we actually need in that moment? So I think that that was like the greatest thing you could have ever did was just ask. But it cracks me up when she was like, "You didn't hold the baby yet? Like, what are you doing?" Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. And I totally get it. Especially because, when the baby comes out, we automatically like, the baby needs to be held, they need to be loved on, they need this, they need that. So I totally get her reaction. Like, the baby hasn't even been held yet? Why not?
Yeah. And look, I know they say that it's really good for bonding with the parents, and I understand that. But at the same token, we have a very well-adjusted little boy. There was no issues with bonding whatsoever, him bonding with us bonding with him. It's still, everything worked out fine. So, in fact, if I think back, I don't think we ever did skin-to-skin contact with him either.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I know I didn't. My partner may have. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, it wasn't something that I did. But yeah, I mean, we've bonded really, really well to the point that my son is like my shadow. He does everything with me, and sometimes it's hard to get a moment of peace.
That is so accurate. That is so accurate, especially when you get a mini-me. There's no running away from the mini-me's.
Yeah, that's right. And for me as well, in the early years, it was really difficult because I saw this beautiful little baby boy that I loved so much. I loved him with everything that I had. But I looked at him and I didn't see myself. He wasn't a mini-me. And it broke my heart, Gotten older, he's picked up a lot of my mannerisms and a lot of my little catchphrases and stuff like. Well, one day he turns around to his mother and he walks up to her and he puts his hand on her face and goes, "Are you okay, my love?" And I turned around to her and I said, "Where's he gotten that from?" And she goes, "You call me my love all the time." And I went, "Do I?" She goes, yeah, you do. And so once she brought my attention to it, I was like, oh, wow, I say that all the time. And so as he's grown up, he started to look a lot like me, but not so physically, but more in his mannerisms, his attitude, the way he does things. It's awesome.
That's beautiful. I feel like bonds are the most important part of being a parent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really easy to try and smother that bond. But something we have tried to do with him ever since he was an infant was to teach him how to be independent, that he can go and do things by himself. He doesn't need us to hold his hand. every step of the way. We're always going to be there if he needs us, but it's not a case of, oh, buddy, don't do that. You're going to get hurt, you know. I mean, one moment in particular there is that I can remember. We had this old plastic cubby house, and had been baking in the Australian sun for 2 years, you know, and he's climbing up on the roof and doing whatever, looking over the neighbour's fence and everything. And my partner's gone, oh, we got to get him down. He's going to fall. I said, no, he'll be fine. If he falls, he'll learn a lesson. Oh, what if he breaks a leg? It's okay. We've got the hospital 2 streets up. We're fine. Don't worry about it. Let him learn. The more we helicopter parent and try and do the, oh, buddy, you know, be careful. Well, then that puts fear into him, and he's not going to explore, and he's not going to learn those lessons by himself. Really, really enforce independence.
And that is so hard for us moms. Like, if only guys knew. It is so hard because I just think naturally we're just so nurturing, and we're so like, that's my baby, no matter what age they are, how big they get. In our heads, somehow, like, we still envision the baby, even though like the baby might be towering over our heads, like mine. You know, in our heads, like they're still small little kids running around, you know, needing mom. So, oh yeah,
Yep.
it's hard.
And I get that. I'm 36 years old, and I know I'm still my mum's little tiger, you know, like I don't think it changes. So, and it's frustrating, you know, my mother still turns around. Are you sure you should be doing this? Or, you know, do you think that's a good idea? And I'm like, for crying out loud, Mum, I'm a grown man. Leave me alone. You know, but I'm grateful that my mum still cares like that, you know, so.
I don't know what it is about the first. Like the bonds are all different naturally because each kid is different. But that oldest, the bond with that one is very different. It's very different. It's very unique. And I don't know if it's because that's usually like the tester child. We don't tell them that, but usually they're the tester child.
we are definitely the tester child.
Exactly. And it's like, and I look at him at times and I'm like, if you only knew how many things I did not know what I was doing. And I was just like, I think this is going to work. Let's see if it sticks. Let's see if it sticks. Yeah. You know, it comes with the territory. It literally does.
That's right. And I don't know if it's because I was the oldest of 5 or whether it was just, I mean, ever since I was a child, ever since I was young, kids have always gravitated towards me, even as a teenager and all that. You know, I'd be in youth group at church, and the young kids in the children's church would still gravitate towards me, want to play and all that sort of thing. So I don't know whether it's that experience or being the oldest of 5 or whatever, but I just felt that fatherhood came naturally to me. I didn't struggle with the feeding or the diapers, or I don't know. It seemed like second nature for me. I was the one reassuring my partner that she was doing everything right.
Yeah, and that is so nice to hear because normally it's both people panicking. So it's like blind leading the blind. And we're just like both getting peed on, both getting all the things at one time. Because I can definitely raise my hand and say that was me. Was not prepared for a boy. So that actually leads me to the question I was going to ask you. When y'all got home, how did things go? Like, what were the emotions and how did y'all adjust? Because my adjustment was crazy.
Yeah, the adjustment was insane. Like, I mean, we were really lucky. We had the nursery set up weeks in advance, if not months in advance. Like everything was ready, waiting for him. We just needed that little bundle to complete the room, right? But what I found was the most surreal thing was the change in perspective on the world, right? So I mean, I went home, I put the car seat into the car. And I will say, I mean, you need an engineering degree for those things because, you know, I'm a welder and fabricator. I can build anything out of steel. I can read technical drawings like it's a story picture book, whatever. But putting that thing in, oh my God, it was the biggest test of patience. But picking him up from the hospital, putting him into that booster seat, driving home. I'd never driven so timidly in my life. I was coasting around corners in second gear because of this fragile little bundle in the back seat. I was seeing other cars doing dangerous stuff that I'd never noticed before. I walked into the apartment that we were in at the time, and I saw all these dangers that didn't stand out 2 days before. It was so surreal. But being able to just sit down on our couch with our son and just finally have that quiet moment of, we're home. It was like a massive relief. All that stress, all that tension and pressure from the previous 2 days of labor and being at the hospital. And I mean, we went home before he did as well. So being at home without him, obviously, there's all this, is he okay? What if this happens? I'm not there, this, that, and the other. So just being able to sit down and have that pressure just sort of lift off us was amazing. And it was our first moment to really appreciate our new little family together.
Yeah, I've always wondered like how y'all feel driving us home because we can't do anything yet and we're all messed up on medicines and stuff. And I can only imagine the panic that's happening because you got us and we're fragile. We can't do much, nothing. Then you got the baby. Then you got everything else around you that we can't do anything about. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So to hear that you'll do be thinking about so many things at one time, just trying to get from like A to B safely as possible without panicking makes so much sense.
The most conscious I'd ever been on the road. I mean, I'm definitely a road rager. I'm the first person to yell at somebody if they're doing something stupid on the road. And like I said, I saw all these things that I'd never noticed before. And I've got this little baby in the back seat. I can't go yelling and screaming like I normally would. So I'm effing and swearing underneath my breath and, what are you doing, you moron, and all this sort of thing. But yeah, it was an experience. It was surreal.
That's so accurate. Because in my head, like thinking on the car situation, I don't even remember any of it. That's the funny thing. I literally, all I remember, and that's how you know they give us a lot of heavy stuff. All I remember is being rolled out with the baby, getting in the car, and then as for the car and then to the house is like a blur of like nothing. And then you remember being in the house. And I'm like, what happened in between there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just the most surreal car ride ever.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was the most focused I've ever been while behind the wheel. So I don't think I'll ever be that focused again either.
I don't think so. Probably because I mean, between the nerves, then the panic, it's just like adrenaline rush on like extreme levels. So, oh my gosh. So that leads me to my last question. I would love to know, like, for any new dads that are about to be, going through this whole process, which is a lot, what advice would you have for them?
Don't buy into the dumb dad trope that is put out there by the media and all that sort of thing. It's okay to be a dumb dad. You're not meant to know it all. Ask questions. There are so many resources out there for mothers when they've just had a baby. There's, your home nurse and mummy and me groups and all this other stuff. There are parenting classes at the hospital and things like that. But there's nothing out there for dads. So, and a bit of a shameless plug here. That's why I started my podcast, Not So Secret Dad's Business. There aren't those resources out there for dads. So if you don't know something, just ask. Just ask. Just a backup. You're not a secondary. You are there to support mum, but that's not the sole focus either. You are also a new parent. And so it's okay. to ask her questions like, hey, I'm unsure about what's going on here. Even if it's not about the baby and it's about her body, her recovery, and how you can help. Ask the question, because there's no such thing as a stupid question. We're all learning at the same time.
Yes, because we really just don't know the answers for everything.
Really a case of fake it till you make it.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah. And then asking questions and trying to do the best you can as you learn. Literally.
That's right. But I mean,
Mhm.
another good thing for dads, I feel as well, is to find other dads, network with other dads. There's a lot of great content out on the internet made by dads for dads. You can just reach out to someone and find, because it's not, you're not alone. It's not all about mum all the time. And I'm sorry to your listeners. I know saying that might rub some people the wrong way. Although looking after mum, as I said, is a very important part of things. You know, you're in this together. You're as much an important part as mum is. You know what I mean? So yeah, just reach out, ask questions. That's all it is, and you'll find what you need. If you ask the right questions, the information will come.
That is so true. Because I have to say that to even to new moms, I think at times we put that pressure on ourselves to be perfect and to know everything. And we try to read all these books, watch all these shows. When in actuality, you're never going to know completely everything because one, our kids are different. And then two, our experience is going to be different, you know? So you don't really know what you're going to need to know until sometimes that situation or thing happens. So,
That's right. You've
yeah.
got to just roll with the punches, see what comes
Mhm.
up, and play it by ear. It's as simple as that. There is no manual out there on how to do this job, you know. And that's why you have a first child. You have a tester baby, make all the mistakes on the first one. Then you can make the perfect ones later. All right. As a first time parent, don't worry. Everybody's clueless. You're not the only one.
Exactly. So I would love to know how they can find you if they would like to get some advice or just a support system. How can they connect with you?
Okay, well, you can find my podcast on my website, which is notsosecretdadsbusiness.com. You can also find it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you stream podcasts. You can find me on Instagram, which is at Not So Secret Dad's Business, and it's the same on Facebook as well. Now, one thing I want to point out is that I don't give advice because I'm just as clueless as you are. Okay. It's all about just finding other people to talk to
Yeah.
and networking and taking bits of information from different places. You know, one thing as a new parent that a lot of people do is they give unsolicited advice. And so
Mhm.
that's one thing I'm very mindful of is that I don't want to give you advice. I just want to have the conversations around these topics, much like you're doing here as well.
Mhm.
And by having those conversations, it uncovers this stuff and you can sort of step back and go, wow, I'm really not the only one. You know, this person
Mhm.
was struggling with this person was struggling with that. And you can take different
Mhm.
tools and apply them to your own life to make yourself a better parent.
Exactly. That is so what Mom Chat Show is. Exactly. So true. I'm so glad you were able to come on here with me. I've been excited about this interview for a while now, and I hope that y'all enjoyed every bit of his story because there was so many great things in it, and it was definitely needed because I think it's important for us to be able to see both sides, of things. And now as moms get a view of the male's point of view, of pregnancy, labor, and all of the things that happen. So I'm very excited about this. And thank you for just giving me your time.
Thank you so much for having me on.
That's it, mamas. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me on the Mom Chat Show. And I would love to connect with you more. So to make sure of that, click that follow button and also follow us on Mom Chat Show on Instagram, where I will talk to y'all again next week. Bye, mamas.